have 4 really great content creators coming on stage. Ben Carlson is going to lead the conversation with Callie Cox, Blake Millard, and Doug Bonaparte. Please give them a warm welcome to the stage.
Hey, everyone. So I started a blog back in 2013. I started a podcast in 2017. So as far as content goes, I'm like the baby boomer up here in a lot of ways. And over the years, I've gotten a ton of questions from advisors about producing content, a lot of the questions that we're going to go over today. But it feels like in the last 12 to 18 months, it has really picked up steam. I'm hearing from advisors all the time who realize that they need some sort of content strategy. They've learned that is how you get ahead. I can't be on the golf course and run webinars all the time. I need to get in front of people. And so that's kind of what this talk is going to be, just the strategies advisors can use and from some people who do this stuff on a regular basis. So I guess kind of where I want to start is just what drew you guys into the content game? Like, why did you think it was such an important part of your wealth management journey in the industry? And I guess, Doug, we can start with you.
Yeah, it's a great question. And you're right. I think this is table stakes at this point. It was watching your firm. It was stumbling upon, this is going to sound almost cliche, but like Gary Vaynerchuk, like 10 years ago, though, like 12 years ago. And it was all inspirational. It kind of showed you, like, you can do this. I didn't see advisors really creating outside of blogs and creating video content or memes or anything like that. And you took a look at which advisors were doing the best and who were capturing clients. And what did you see? They were all writing. They were on a writing schedule. They were putting out content, but they were putting out content consistently. And that was the number one lesson. All right, how do we now find something that we can enjoy to put out on a weekly basis, knowing it's going to be hard? Just because you enjoy it doesn't mean it's not going to be hard. So I kind of looked at what the best practices were from the best practices, and that was my conclusion. And again, a little Gary Vee in there too. It was like, you can do it.
Yeah, so I had a bit of a different background. I actually went to journalism school, so I did the content thing before finance. And I feel like I was lucky in that regard. I did J school because I knew I was a good writer, but I didn't exactly know how that would translate into a career. Of course, I was like, I could be a reporter, and I was. I was lucky enough to get hired for Bloomberg right out of school. So I was doing the content thing, and then I stumbled into this love for money in the finance industry and explaining what investing is to all different types of customers and clients. And that's really what I built my, content platform around. I just started talking on the internet, and people found it interesting. Now, I know that we're living in different times now. I was a reporter in 2013, and I feel like the platforms have just exploded since then. But, I have always believed that storytelling is incredibly important, and that it's akin to marketing in a way. And I know marketing is a bit of a dirty word, but that's ultimately what you're doing when you're putting out content. You're doing the soft sell instead of the hard sell. So I feel lucky that I learned content right off the bat, and then I kind of pivoted my way into finance and the RIA space and wealth management. But I think that also puts me at a really unique position in explaining how to find your voice, because I got formal training on it.
I think it's helpful because you said, not to brag, I was a good writer already. I wasn't at all. And I think a lot of people think like they have to be Billy Shakespeare before they get started, and that's not the case at all. I think this is something that you can definitely get better at the more you do. It's like a muscle that I think your stuff at first is probably not going to be that good, but that's okay because no one's going to be reading it.
It's definitely going to not be good, and I think if you accept that right off the bat, you'll be better off for it.
Yeah.
So my approach to content is even very different from you guys. I actually got started just writing during the 2022 bear market. Our clients were starting to really freak out. Our advisors that I sit and support were asking me all these questions, and I just was writing a daily internal note. Again, sort of your point, Ben, that this was not a well thought out thing. I don't have any sort of journalism background, but I realized that content isn't just a marketing channel. It's literally the front door to your firm. So throughout this process of 2022, when I'm writing this internally, we're just having a discussion, well, why don't we just clean up the language a little bit and write this in a public forum? And just from that, you just sort of run with it, and it just sort of takes a life of its own. But as you can just see from our different perspectives, we've all come at this from very, very different backgrounds.
Yeah, and the consistency thing is what I want to talk about, because you publish your newsletter on a daily basis or 5 days a week when the market is open, you're publishing. And some people try to figure out how often do I need to publish. Doug said, well, we do something weekly. I think the consistency is the biggest part, but do you ever feel a lot of pressure that, oh my gosh, I have to come up with something every day to write about?
So the good news is the line of work that we've all chosen, I always find it's actually pretty easy. I'm always wrestling with something. It's oftentimes it's coming from a client or it's coming from an advisor. There's something that's, on my mind that I have to sort of sink my teeth into, and the way I think through things is I just have to write my thoughts down, and it allows that sort of clarity. You can then use that as a benefit to, oh my gosh, I've put all this time and energy into it. I've looked at some different charts. I've read different people's perspectives on this. Here's sort of my own unique take and voice on it, and you can publish that, and people are then perhaps interested in what you have to say. So the daily part is, it sounds tough, and I know that's not how everyone sort of approaches it.
That's insane. I just want you to know.
But there's just always
Wow.
something to sort of think through and wrestle, and for me, it's pretty natural.
Yeah, I think just to be very clear, like that is quite the talent. That is insane. I would tell, but I would fully agree with, I think our biggest fear would be a no news day or a slow day, because then we don't have I don't have what I need to make a meme. You don't have what you need to write that piece that's very current. So I got to give you a ton of credit for coming up with this on a daily basis. With the bigger point being, whatever it is, what daily, weekly, monthly, it is the consistency part. Stick
100%.
to that. You got to put in the reps. Almost anything in life that you want to improve upon, whether it's your writing skills, your content creation, your fitness, your financial health, all of that, you do it one time, nothing's going to happen. Do it 200 times, you don't need to listen to this panel.
Yeah, so two things here too. I agree. Daily is really hard. I've done daily. I did daily as a reporter, and that was my whole job. But also I did daily at LPL for a bit, and that was shut off 2 hours in the morning every single day. But I agree with the reps, and I also want to add, not every rep will feel good. You will put some stuff out that you aren't 100% confident in, or you're almost, I don't want to say packing it in, but you don't feel like it's a home run because it is a no news day. That's normal. Everybody feels it. Just put it out there. Every rep matters.
And the thing is, someone asked me this last night over beers. They said, so at this point, you've been doing this long enough, you know what will hit and what won't hit, right? There's a formula. And I said, no, I still don't have it figured out, because you could put all of your time and effort and hours into a piece and you go, this is the best thing I've ever written, and no one's going to care. And you could throw off something that you wrote in 10 minutes and just getting these jumbled thoughts out of your brain, and it can go crazy and people love it. And I still don't think that you have, so I think that's why you have to have a lot of at-bats, because you don't know what's going to resonate with people or what's going to cause someone to reach out to you and think of you. I told this story last night. One of our biggest clients early on in the firm came to us because I wrote some boring piece about individual bonds versus bond funds, and he happened to be Googling that. And he read that piece, and then he said, oh, I'll read some more about what this guy says, and he led him to reach out. And so I think it's almost like you're building like this library, and you don't know when you're going to need to pull those individual pieces out to use.
I think I'll challenge you a little bit on that, because I generally think you're right, because you're always right. No, here's where I challenge that, though, and I'll give a real example. We were fortunate enough to have a nice feature in the New York Times for our book, and I put that out on Twitter, and that gets 83 likes. Same time we have the Apple, announcement of a new iPhone. I post a joke I've told every time there's an Apple announcement out there, 1,300 likes. And to your point, you never know what's going to hit, absolutely. Like, what you think might not, but at the same time, after enough time, you will know your audience, right? You will start to understand more about what they crave, how you capture their attention. And I think that's very important for later on. And this is not something you need to focus on when everybody starts from zero, right? You will be shouting into the ether for a while. And the sooner you get comfortable with that fact and not care about the dopamine hits and the likes and all of that, the better off you're going to be, because nothing would disrupt your consistency more than caring about those vanity metrics at a time when you're trying to just build the muscle.
Yeah.
I agree. I think you need to worry less about the output and more about your own input. The output will eventually just take care of itself, and whatever the number might be, it might never even be good enough for you. Those are things that are largely out of your control. I think you need to focus more on just the input, authenticity, being yourself, being vulnerable, sharing a mistake, sharing a view that might be out of consensus. Just focus more on like what you can control, which is just being yourself and trying to tell your story, your truth, and focus less on the metrics. The metrics will eventually come in due time.
I think that's the hard part for a lot of people starting out is finding their own voice, and because I think a lot of people start off like a financial robot and try to make it really good, and it comes out like a term paper or something, and that's not going to resonate with anyone. So I do think you have to. I've always tried, and I think I learned a lot of this from Josh and Barry, that a lot of times they write like they talk, right? It should be more all caps because they yell a lot, but I think there is something to finding your own voice. And the other thing about content, you're writing market stuff, but for a lot of advisors, you already know what the content is because you get questions all the time from your clients. You know what questions they're going to ask depending on the scenario. And I think if you go out and try to kind of answer some of those before the scenario happens, I think that's a good way to come up with some sort of content that you can go, oh yeah, I wrote about this thing 18 months ago here. And then you prove your expertise. You have the resume there that you've already kind of thought about. But I'm just curious how you all figured out, like, what is my voice going to be? What is my tact going to be when I try to, because you're being yourself, but you're also, having to keep it pretty organized and play a character or something, I guess. So how do you guys think of that?
Oh, I think of this in two ways, and I'm going to give you something tactical and strategic, which I know everybody loves. Walk away with calls to action. So, tactical part first. You have to be confident in your writing to establish your voice. And that confidence will look different from person to person, but for me, strangely enough, confidence came with reps and it came with structure. So, like I said, I went to journalism school. A lot of that is reps, and then like learning structure, like the news pyramid, and learning the steps of publishing things and how to edit and how to tailor for audiences and stuff. But it's mostly reps. When I started at Bloomberg, I had to learn the Bloomberg style, which it's writing U.S. with periods instead of U.S. without periods. But it's also how to get your message across in the most concise and powerful way in the first 4 or 5 paragraphs. And that doesn't necessarily mean that 4 or 5 paragraphs is your content, but there was almost a formulaic structure that Bloomberg reporters followed. It's actually called the Bloomberg Way. You can get a book on it. I'm sure it's on Amazon. But once I got that structure down and I felt confident in what I was saying and what my punchy message would be, then I felt comfortable enough and confident enough to editorialize. And from there it gets really heady. I went to therapy. I learned a lot about what my voice, and I established what my perspective would be for the world. Because one thing I think all of us need to realize is that we have an incredibly unique perspective on the world that will overlap with your clients, will overlap with other people, but only you see the world as you do. And I think once I realized that and I was able to bring that to the forefront, then that was my voice. Then it just kind of happened and I fell into it. And lucky for me, that made it to the point where I was an effective writer, but I was also a writer that had a personality, a soul. So I'm interested in how you guys came to this, but I've thought about this a lot, if you can't tell. And I think that's my journey.
I don't think you necessarily find your voice. I think it's sort of revealed to you. It reveals itself through constant, you're doing this over and over and over. You're getting your reps in. You will eventually, your voice will sort of just shine through naturally on its own. And, you have to forge that voice. It's through not just 1 post or 2 posts or 10 posts. I mean, it's going to take you a little while, sort of, for you to find the proper way in which you want to articulate whatever it is you're trying to say.
I think an easier, or not so much a shortcut, but something that could make a lot of sense here is to think about yourself. Think about what you like. I love making everyone laugh. I truly do. I love making my wife laugh, my kids laugh, my friends. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to. I view comedy and I view laughter as the easiest and most direct way to connect to someone. Guards come down, boom, instant connection if you can just get a chuckle. I don't care if people don't think I'm a serious person. I really am, but if I'm getting you to laugh, we're getting somewhere in establishing a connection. Guess what? I should probably be making you laugh when you're reading my content. Number one, I love doing it. So it's not, all this stuff can be extremely daunting. Those of you who are trying and want to get into this, you are probably here, oh my God, I need to do this. Yes, you do need to do the reps. Yes, these are the fundamental things that you need to do to be successful at this. It will be uncomfortable. We've told you to accept that. Now focus on the good part. What are you good at? What do you like? What do your friends know you for? You know, people say all these hacks to get up early in the morning. What if you hate all of them? You are not getting up early in the morning. What if you love playing Roblox? Go play 30 minutes of Roblox.
I think that it comes through if you're not writing about stuff that you care about, the audience can tell, right? So I do think that that's where your audience of you is the first one you think of, right? And what am I thinking about? What am I interested in right now? And I think that comes through in the content, and the audience can see that too. Like, oh, okay, they really care about this idea. Callie, when we first started, you kind of mentioned all the different areas and platforms that you can post on now, and it's growing, you know, seemingly by the year, but it's social media, and it's newsletters, and it's blogs, and it's podcasts, and it's YouTube, and I think that can be overwhelming for advisors to kind of go like, wait, do I have to do all of this? Do I have to hit all of these channels? Do I pick one? And I think that strategy is difficult for someone just starting out, and it can be very overwhelming. So I'm curious how you guys think about how do I get in front of people the best way possible? Do I spray and pray, or do I just focus on one platform and go from there?
Yeah, so I'll give you guys a little bit of inside baseball. This is not a natural conversation. We plan these questions beforehand, but I'm telling you this because I know part of the question was where you want to target this content, current clients versus prospects, and I think the answer is actually different depending on what you want to focus on. And I'll start off by saying I think it's incredibly important to pinpoint what you want your content to do for yourself. There's a lot of creativity that comes into this, but it is a content strategy, after all. You know, there's strategy is in the name. So I would have different answers depending on if you're trying to grow your brand versus if you're trying to nurture current clients and keeping them in the know. For prospects, yes, there are a lot of platforms. I think every platform has a different benefit. I know everybody is really digging short form video right now. I think there's a lot to be said there, but it's also very hard. I don't know if anybody's edited a video before, but it sucks. I hate it. Maybe you're into video editing and you love it, but I find that the skill set you need for a writer is totally different than what you need for an editor. But short form video seems to be doing really well on platforms right now. The TikToks, the Instagrams of the world, you have to consider compliance there.
Doug's on OnlyFans.
Doug's on OnlyFans. He could tell you about that. Heather's like, what?
$10 a month, guys.
But I think the first step you need to take is to define exactly what you want to do. Because for current clients, the approach we take at Ritholtz is that we write directly to them. We hit them through email. We hit them through advisor contacts. We hit them through calls and webinars. So I think it really depends on what you want to do. I wouldn't lean too much on socials if you want to focus more on current clients and vice versa. But I mean, just getting out there is really important too. And tactical, again, I find that LinkedIn is surprisingly good for building brand and getting yourself out there.
I tell advisors, if you don't know where you want to start, always figure out how to get into someone's inbox. Everyone checks their inbox, right? So Blake,
That's true.
You have a newsletter. I think that's the thing. People will check it. So I think building an email list is probably the most important thing if you don't know where to start.
And it's portable too.
Right. Yes, it's
If you wanna
portable.
leave a
You can
Twitter
add
or
you can add
something.
prospects down there. It's a way to stay in front of people without being too pushy about it.
I would argue having those email addresses is if you had to choose between losing your content and losing email addresses, I'd lose my content easily. So that's your currency. Keep that in mind as you're building here your lists, your follows, your content. Your email addresses.
And as you think about like how you're gonna portray your message across different platforms, to Callie's point, each platform works in very different ways and has different audiences that you can speak to. So one thing you can definitely leverage, I write a newsletter, which is a little bit longer form. That is not geared towards what Callie is saying is completely true, which is short form video is really where most of our attention is because we don't have attention anymore. It's how fast can you just flick up or to the side. So you can use powerful tools like AI to say, hey, I've built this nice long form post. It's sort of now in my content archive. It doesn't fit this platform, or this platform. You can go into a Copilot and you can establish what your post was, and you can sort of ask for that guidance as to, okay, how do I get this down to like a 25-second clip that would be engaging? It shares the same message, but it's a lot more done in a way that can be succinctly hooking a TikTok type audience. So the audience can vary. You can use tools to cross promote your own brand and message across different platforms if you just use technology the right way.
Just a word of caution around which platform you want to be on. And we live in a world where you'll hear from folks that say you need to be everywhere on all platforms. Blake's right. The tools are better than ever to take long form, turn it and chop it up into videos, turn it into all different kinds. Just be very mindful of your own resources and time. A lot of you are financial advisors and professionals. You don't have 5 hours in your day or necessarily in a week to do this while you're servicing clients and running your firms and stuff like that. So my word of caution is, if you can focus on where your audience lives, right? Like if you have an older crowd and they're on Facebook, you should probably be making content on Facebook. If you have a super young crowd, guess what? They're probably on TikTok. Very tough from a compliance point of view, but that's probably where you should be. I would love to replicate what I've done on X, Twitter to Instagram and scale it that way. These algorithms, they're insidious. They make you play a game. They all make you play their own unique game. They all change every 5 months. And no matter if you're starting out or even if you've scaled up to hundreds of thousands of subscribers or followers, it starts to become this thing. So remember, just where is your audience? What's the end goal? Are you trying to attract clients? Are you trying to inform the public? Are you just trying to have fun? Maybe it's a mix of all of these things. But definitely think with the end in mind when you are creating your content. And don't feel obligated to, right off the rip, be on 6 different platforms at once.
So you brought up the boring topic here, but I think a lot of advisors care about it, because I get questions about this all the time, the compliance thing. Well, how do I want to do what you guys do, but what about compliance? And how do I get a lot of questions from wirehouse people, and I tell them, like, you're never going to get it done. Sorry, with your compliance, it's never going to happen. But a lot of advisors want to make sure that they're staying above board. I've always just we started out before we even had a full-time compliance person at Ritholtz. Josh and Barry weren't checking my blog every day before I hit send, or Michael's. It was more common sense of, are you providing context and perspective and information, or are you giving price targets and offering stock buy? So I do think a little common sense goes a long way, and there's a lot of, technology platforms, there's probably some here, that can help you track this stuff and stay up on it. Like Doug, working for an independent firm, like I'm sure you outsource a lot of that stuff, right?
Yes and no. There are many years where we did not have the compliance support. We were, the named CCOs. We were the ones purchasing if you mean by help by having the right capture tools. So this is the thing for financial advisors. Anything you're doing in terms of content creation, you need to capture, you need to review, and you need it stored. Okay? And your biggest fear is SEC, state regulator coming in and saying, show me these things. Best case, slap on the wrist. Worst case, fine. This is terrible stuff, right? If you're not doing that. So getting this part down is not only important for actually being able to do it, but I think it's going to make you better when you actually create content, because you're not going to have to go back and change things. You're going to get it right up front. But yeah, you can outsource it. It's just one of those areas I think it's worth spending a decent amount of money on to keep yourself safe and make sure you don't have something so silly come back to be a giant headache that's not only costly of time, but maybe costly of money as well. But don't let compliance stop you from doing it. Learn the compliance. Consult with it. You can find this information and then do it and be consistent with that as well. It's real.
So Michael Kitces one time told me something along the lines of blogging is sales for introverts, which I resonates with me a lot, because I'm more introverted about that stuff. I never wanted to be in sales. I never had that personality. I know other people who can sell the proverbial ketchup popsicle to the woman in white gloves, right? Some people are just born with that skill. But so I'm curious how you all think about being subtle or blatant about not only producing content, but then also saying, hey, by the way, I do this stuff, but I also help people with this stuff. So how do you guys think about towing the line between not shoving it down people's throats, but also offering regular reminders that, I do have this business here that could use clients?
Yeah, so I think you have to be blatant with a lot of caveats beside that. So there's the soft sell and there's the hard sell. I think both have a place. A lot of what I do in my newsletter, when you see me on media, I'm not throwing Ritholtz in there a lot. I'm not throwing Optimistic Hallie in there a lot. It's the soft sell. We've established our investment philosophy. We've established our values at Ritholtz, and you'll hear those come up a lot in what I say publicly. But you won't hear me, flat out beg for people to join Ritholtz, or you won't hear me or you won't see me wink at the camera and say hey, check out Ritholtz's website. That won't work. And for what it's worth, I have a media background, so I'm thinking about media strategy a lot when I'm talking about this. If you're trying to get out on the Bloombergs and the CNBCs of the world, if you hard sell on there, that's it. They're not having you back on. So that's something to keep in mind. Soft sell does work in certain areas. It does make your content more palatable. But I think ultimately, if you want to drive business outcomes, especially when you're talking to current clients, especially in brokerage world, this is a big deal. You have to tell the reader, the listener, what you want them to do, because it's not always obvious to them. So one thing we think about with our Liftoff and Good Advice platforms, content there, is we think about calls to action. Why are we sending this email out to our clients? What do we want them to do? Do we want them to fund their account? Do we want them to set up recurring investments? Do we want them to consider other service tiers because maybe they came to us with $250K, but they have another $5 million sitting with them at home that we don't know about? So I think the hard sell is important in certain parts of your content strategy, but you have to be really careful about when you pull it out. Again, going back to having to be strategic and understanding what you're trying to get out of the audience you're talking to.
So I think of this in sort of there's an old mindset and there's sort of a new reality. So the old mindset is content is essentially it's marketing collateral. You have blogs, you have social posts, all of them are used to help facilitate the sales process. I think more the new reality is content essentially is the sales process. Your first time reaching someone's inbox, a post, however you communicate your message, that's the first time that this person is now hearing of your name, hearing your voice, hearing it is what you're articulating, what you're speaking to. That content piece itself is essentially some form of a sales process that is bringing your end user closer into you. So I think it's less about, again, this old mindset of I need this treasure trove of all these things. If people are thinking that, you're on top of this, you're thinking through these things, these are current events that you're working your way through it, that invites someone much closer to you so that by the time you actually have a conversation with this person, they feel like they know you. Ben is a great example. I've been reading Ben's blog on and off for close to a decade now. You get to the point where I almost feel like I could talk to Ben as a friend. He lives in Michigan. I have twins. He has twins. He's written about his twins a lot. You get to that point where I now know a little bit more about Ben. I can trust his voice. I trust who he is, where he's coming from. He's been vulnerable. He speaks, to these complicated financial matters that run through our lives, but then he can also humanize that to a point where, again, as your audience, you're bringing that person in because essentially you've built that trust.
I think the trust is, that's the most valuable commodity in financial services, right? Because you're not producing a widget and giving someone an end product, right? It's a service, so trust is a big key. I wish I could say that was my grand plan when I first started writing. It wasn't. But once you realize that, that this stuff does help, but it helps make a better point. But I think the other part of it is, you mentioned, we've been talking about the sales thing. I think one of the biggest pieces for advisors is that it helps you with your current clients too. It's not just prospects, it's your current clients. Advisors will tell me all the time, hey, I got a question from a client about this topic. Have you written about this yet? And yeah, I did that 6 months ago, and you send it off to them, and the client thinks like, oh, they wrote this just for me. And it helps the advisors be more efficient and not have to answer as many phone calls about the same topic over and over again.
But they'll also then send it to a friend, a family member, or someone, and be like, this is my advisor, this is my guy. Look at this thoughtful piece. I was thinking of you because it applies to you too. Guess who's getting a referral? You.
Yeah. I also want people to realize that this is content strategy again, but this is what people call the flywheel. It's the idea that you don't have to write about unique things every time your pen hits the page. In fact, it's important to think about the scale of this and how you can make your voice as loud as possible to multiple platforms without having to do much work on the front end. Or much work is probably not. You're doing a lot of work because you're creating content, but you want to be as efficient as possible. And that's something we focus on a lot to add Ritholtz to Ben's point. We all have said really important things. We all have said versions of what other public voices have said, but we've said it in our voice, we've taken our own perspective, and we've thought of ways to distribute it so that the impact of what we're saying, the message, is that much louder.
I think what's great about if you're writing and if you're addressing a problem that a client is having, that will surface much more than just the 1 or 2 times that is relevant in that moment in which you're writing about it or recording a video. Something like, dollar cost averaging in the market versus lump sum investing. That's a topic that you can write about today, and that will be relevant next week for a client. It'll be relevant next month to a client. It'll be relevant in a year and 10 years. So, again, when you've built a trove of content that has specifically addressed client thorny issues over the years, you can almost guarantee that is something you can rely on well into the future, and you can just quickly pull it up, and instead of having to rehash that, it's just like, oh yeah, I've written about this, and I had sourced certain ideas as well from this person and this person. If you're not really even wanting to believe what my voice is, here's 2 or 3 other brilliant people who've also thought about it in a different way, and collectively, all of that can help address some sort of issue that's pressing.
Yeah, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every single day.
Not at all.
You can stand on the shoulders of giants, of people who had already thought about this stuff, and share that, because not everyone has read as much as you have on this topic probably. I think we have about 10 minutes left, so we'll take some Slido questions, and I'm not afraid if someone's loud enough to shout out a question if anyone has any thoughts. Okay, for people who didn't hear, he just asked, what's our end goal for creating content? Why did we do it in the first place? So, Doug, you can go first.
Yeah, so the word I love is relatability. I'm doing everything I can to relate to people, because if I can establish relatability, we're going to have an easier time working together. I can get my messages across here. I already shared with you, humor is how I relate to people. So I could put those 2 things together. In addition to that, it was, hey, you're at a wealth, management festival. We all, I hope, dig wealth management. I don't know about you. I go talk to 10 of my friends in a circle. It might not be what they want to talk about, right? It's not necessarily going to be, a 30-minute conversation around the nuances of actively managed ETFs versus, direct indexing. I just had the whole circle to span and walk away from me. But if you can use humor to broach a topic that we would nerd out about that makes it more palatable to someone who's not really into finance, boom, you got them in the finance. You're having the conversation. Hey, Doug, I really enjoyed that talk about it. Like, what else do you know? What else can we do? Can I hit you up?
Yeah, so I should have explained this at the beginning, but I have a bit of a split personality situation. I have Optimistic Alley, which is my newsletter. That's my personal, it's under the compound, but that's like my personal newsletter. And I have different objectives there than I do for what I say is my day job, which is chief market strategist at Ritholtz, which is why you see me on the Bloombergs and the Yahoo Finances of the world. I'm representing Ritholtz in the investment committee. So I'll give you two answers. I have Optimistic Alley because I love the creative outlet there. I know that I can offer a differentiated voice in finance. My favorite thing is when people come up to me and they say, I have never understood something like the Federal Reserve, but I heard you explain it and now I get it. That's music to my ears. That's like you've made my entire week if you tell me that. So I take a lot of pride in knowing that I am stepping out and I have the platform now to really make a difference in finance in the community. I love being the market nerd that people turn toward. But for Ritholtz, we have business objectives. Always keep the business objectives in mind when you're writing content. I think about ways to communicate with advisors and clients that are effective in pushing forward our investment philosophy, our values, why we invest the way that we do. And I know that was a complicated answer, but going back to two different objectives.
I think at the end of the day, when clients are hiring a wealth manager, they're hiring you as a firm to help solve different problems. You're an advisor. You're giving service to the client, and you're guiding them along the way. If you're writing content that helps people at the end of the day solve some sort of problem, that is just, again, it's one form of closing that sales cycle of trust that brings your audience closer to you.
I kind of fell backwards into it because I was working in the institutional space where people just talked a lot of jargon and really complicated stuff, and I was thinking to myself the whole time I'm having these conversations, no regular person would understand what these people are talking about. And so I decided, I'm going to translate finance into the basic parts and speak in plain English, and not realizing a bunch of financial advisors started reaching out to me and going, hey, can I use this for my clients? Because they're regular people too. They need it like this. So that was my goal, to make this complicated stuff easier for people to understand. We got a good question here. I like this one. How do you decide what to focus on, producing deeper content for a niche audience versus casting a wider net? Because I think most advisors, probably the niche thing is the better place to start. I think because if you have certain client types that you work with, or an expertise in tax, or some sort of thing that you can hang on to and be that person for that topic, I think that is a very valuable skill to have.
No question about it. Start with the niche. It's probably the thing you like to talk about, right? So you're going to already start with something you know a lot about or are very interested in. It's going to make your life a lot easier. You're also going to build a very engaged audience around that because everyone wants to talk about that one thing. I think it is incredibly difficult and it will drive you crazy to do the mass appeal thing right up front. You need a very big audience to do that. So focus on building it up and niching down. I started with talking about millennials and money. That was novel, 12 years ago when no one gave a crap, if a millennial could invest money or not. And now, we still, went broad. During COVID, the Twitter account blew up. Great jokes, ha ha ha. Now it's about love and money, right? We come back to things that relationships and money and a topic that we can be very specific about. So you can go through cycles of this, actually. You can constantly, and by the way, guys, you will have to reinvent yourself. It is first act, second act, third act. The algo is going to mix you up. Your interests are going to go elsewhere. Your clients are going to age. They're going to be interested in other things. So, just when you think you got it all solved and you're getting all the dopamine in the world, you will be humbled due to time and attention and new technology over and over again. So resiliency and stick-to-itiveness, that's why the consistency and the reps is so important, because all the workout machines are going to change on you, and you're going to have to learn them all over again. You are not immune to it. None of us are.
Yeah, here's another good question. What's the most effective way you've seen content move someone from being a casual follower to becoming a client? I think this is the hardest piece, is that you think, I'm going to put out all these brilliant insights, and clients are just going to flock to me. They're going to see it, and they're going to go, oh, that's my finance person. And it doesn't work like that at all. It's someone is going to come to you when they have a problem they need solved, right? They have a life event happen. They come into some money. They get married. There's a death in the family. They're going to come. You want to be first in their mind when something happens. That's the thing. It's not just, oh, great. Look at all this great stuff I'm producing. Throw your money at me. It doesn't work like that. It takes a lot longer than you think to have this stuff work. But then once you're top of mind for people, then it starts happening more and more often. And you realize, oh, yes, there's a lot of life events coming up for a lot of people these days.
Yeah, so I love what you just said, and I want to remind people this is when it makes sense to be a little more blatant, to be a little more out there with what you want the reader or listener to do. Of course, it depends on the platform, but the life events mentioned made me think of, what we do. And again, marketing is a dirty word, but like that's what we're doing with content strategy. It makes me think about what we do with Liftoff and Good Advice, which, by the way, are lower tiers at Ritholtz. They have lower minimums. We focus on life events because we assume that a good portion of this audience we're talking to are those younger Henry-type clients who are going through the typical life events of buying a house, starting a family, going through job changes, maybe acquiring some equity. And we use that to our advantage. We talk about life events. We say, hey, are you thinking about buying a house? Well, here are some things you need to think about. Here's the rate environment. Oh, by the way, if you want to talk to an advisor, we have great advisors you can talk to on the Good Advice side. Click here, schedule some time with them. Again, it depends on the platform, but I think you can use the knowledge around the audience that you're talking to your advantage. And you don't have to feel bad about that. That's just strategy.
All right, I think that is kind of coming up. I mentioned I'm blogging as a sales for Introverse, but I will do one plug. At 3:20, Michael and I are doing a live Animal Spirits over there on the PCH stage. And then immediately after, we are doing a happy hour at the Ritholtz Wealth compound booth over there, where we'll have a frozen drink machine serving a Miami Vice to anyone who wants one. It's the most diversified of all drinks, and if you've never had one beachside, then you're not living life.
Ben is being blatant right now. I love it. He's telling you what to do, so please
You've
do
never
it.
had a Long Island iced tea, I see.
No, I'm in a flyover state. So I want to thank Blake and Callie and Doug. Thanks everyone in the audience. Appreciate your time.